What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to MechCast, and today again I am joined by Dan Bartels, who there hasn't been a ton of news since then, but a lot of interesting news. Dan, we had the Teoscar Hernandez news drop today, 3 years. I thought he might have gotten a little more money, but then you find out the practically entire contract, almost it feels like, has been deferred. They'll be called the La Deferred Dodgers. I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying on X. What are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, right. I mean, good to be with you too, by the way. 23 million deferred for him. I mean, that's great. $15 million club option. They got their guy back 3 years. He was one of the better bats to go off the market. Now we kind of look at Santander. We'll talk about Pete, of course. Jesse Winker's still out there, right? I mean, there's definitely bats that you can look at all around that haven't gone. And I think they will soon, but Teoscar was the first one. We'll get into Bregman as well.
What do you now? It's really interesting because we've seen for how long we think that Santander is going to be by all means, a starting outfielder. But now people are throwing around his name as strictly being a DH. Do you think he'd be open to that? Because if that is true, the Mets got to be all over that, don't you think?
Yeah, they should have been. I mean, listen, there's so much flexibility with that Dodgers lineup now that we're looking at. I mean, Ray, they scare any Mets fan. Let's be honest. I mean, Teoscar adding them or him back to them is going to be crazy. They had to do it. I mean, right when Soto signed, you see Conforto go for 1 year, $17 million, and then you don't hear anything about Teoscar. Like, there was definitely talk before Soto. It sounded like that was going to be their pivot, and it eventually was. But now that Conforto's in the mix, it doesn't seem that way. So, yeah, I think DH is probably the best option.
So I want to bring up the breakdown really quick of his contract so fans can get a little bit a little bit more familiar with it. Here we go. Per Jeff Passan, the outfielder Teoscar Hernandez in the Los Angeles Dodgers, blah, 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 3 years, $66 million. It's been widely reported. The deal includes a fourth-year option for $15 million and a little more than $23 million in deferred money and $23 million signing bonus. So does that – he's technically getting what? $21 million a year?
Yeah.
21. So we get to a $23 million signing bonus this year. So that's on top of that, and it's deferred. What is his cap number next year? $1 million? That's what it appears to be. I mean, that's
great.
That's insane.
That's
funny.
The power of the Dodgers, right? The deferred money.
Yeah. Are you surprised more other teams aren't doing this? Like, if you're the Baltimore Orioles, your window is so small. Because let's be honest, the odds of their shortstop getting the free agency are like 99%. He's another Scott Boras agent. If your window is that small, why not say, you know what, we are going to sign Burnes to 7 years, and we're going to defer the last 2 years, and we'll Bobby Bonilla it. We'll pay it off for 20 years. We're trying to win right now. Why don't smaller organizations do that? I mean, Tampa Bay doesn't do it. It seems like the Dodgers and now the Mets. I mean, the Mets haven't deferred a ton of money, but the Manaea contract, a tiny portion of it's deferred. But overall, why aren't these smaller market teams just taking advantage of this?
I mean, it's tough for these small markets, Ray. You got to think about it too, because the bigger markets like the Mets and the Dodgers, they can afford to take that hit down the line. I mean, that's what deferred money is. You're just pushing it off to a later date. If you're the Reds or something, I mean, that would be a lot tougher for you to plan future strategy, right? Because you have this clog in 10 years because you signed, say, Ohtani, right? It would be something crazy. It just wouldn't fit. So I hear what you're saying. The smaller markets need to compete. That's why the sharing of these funds and everything is always great, but it's tough. And credit to the Orioles, who were able to kind of come out of the cellar in a way. They were one of the worst teams in baseball. Certainly when I was growing up, the Orioles were bad. Buck Showalter's Orioles, like, they were never that good. So, yeah, it's just tough.
Well, I want to bring something up that Zach has said right here, this comment right here. From my understanding, and Dan, maybe you're more versed in this than I am, but it says the actual bonus is on top of the 66, correct? I'm not too sure about that.
It's
that would be no, I don't see that
included.
I think that's part of the contract. So what the Dodgers essentially are doing is they are taking his money this year, giving him 23 million on top of that because it's almost like reverse Otani. Otani's is deferred down the line. That signing bonus almost front loads the contract. So the last 2 years they have him at a couple $1,000,000. So 23, they're pretty much paid the last year off this year. That's kind of like what
Right.
I'm getting at, plus the $15 million option. I'm pretty sure Hernandez took less money to return to the Dodgers. I think he really wanted to be there. He liked it out there.
How could you
You
not?
know, we hear a lot of things about players wanting to stay where they're at. Another thing that's interesting, which we've brought up plenty of times, and this is from San Francisco Giants NBC. Uh, the Giants supposedly have a massive offer in for Corbin Burnes. We've been talking about this for how long, though, Dan? I mean, it makes so much sense. The Giants, for years, have tried to throw money at free agents, whether it's Aaron Judge or, they overpay for Cueto. It seems like for years they've always been throwing money at these free agents and just nobody wants to play there. So maybe I can't believe this is going to happen, but the Orioles, who have new ownership, and I know we'll get to a lot of more than Mets talk as we go through the show, but the Orioles have this new ownership that's rich as all hell, and they're going to let their prize free agent walk out the door. It's almost like, let's be honest, that is their Juan Soto to an extent. I mean, you lose him, all of a sudden your competitiveness drops 2 or 3 notches.
Right. I don't know who's paying him 245 million, Ray. That was the number we heard
Right, I
last night.
seen that.
Like,
Yep.
that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to pay that in their right mind. Same thing with 200 million for Alonso. We'll get to that, but nobody's going to pay these prices. That's just the reality of it. And it
Right.
sucks to say, but these agents are not going to get what they want. And Scott Boras this year, you saw what he did last year to guys like Montgomery, guys like Snell. The
Right.
longer you leave them waiting, it's just you got to get it done, Ray. I'm thinking short term with Burnes, 3 years, 4 years. That's probably where he's going to settle.
So I want to bring this one thing up that I tweeted out today. It got a lot of interaction, or tweeted X, whatever the hell you want to pull it, posted. There was this quote that I put out there from Sal Licata, and typically I disagree with Sal Licata on a lot of things, but I totally disagree. One, with the jacket that he always wears, because I have the same jacket, and two, this quote:
I like
Pete
that.
Alonso made a major mistake, got greedy, and signed with Scott Boras. Then he went on to say he was expecting Aaron Judge money. Who the heck sold him on? You really think Scott Boras sold him on Aaron Judge type money?
Be tough. That'd be a tough sell to do. Let's be honest. That you can't do that. So Scott Boras, we know he's just going to take the highest dollar. I mean, he's been doing it forever, and he's really good at it. Like, I think we don't realize this whole Soto thing. We played right into his hand. I mean, 550 to 600 to 700. Soto was never getting that. Even guys like Pete, like we said, who benchmark themselves to Judge, sometimes you're just not getting that money. Maybe
I
at
know.
one other time you would, but not in this market.
I agree with you. It's really like I want to say I feel bad for Pete, but I don't, because I feel the initial. And if you guys have comments, we'll be going through the comments as we go through. I'll be pulling them up here for us. If you have a comment you want to get on the live stream, we'll be sure to read a lot of these things. Somebody we have Nelson Cruz puts out Santander, the new Jock Peterson. Listen, if that's true and he's open to just DHing, I think that's a brilliant idea, and we'll pull up his stats in a minute. But when we talk about Pete Alonso, I really feel like the Mets made a very reasonable offer. I would love to be a fly on the wall, Dan. What did Scott Boras promise Pete Alonso last offseason to make him reject a 7-year contract? What did he say?
Right. No, I know. He had to have sold him on that he was going to be projecting well. Like, if Pete went out there, did what Judge did, right? Bet on himself, has a monster season, doesn't set a record, but say Pete went out there and hit 50 home runs this year, you can give him 200 million, not even think twice. That was the goal, Ray.
Right.
That never happened. And you look at it, and yeah, 34 home runs, but let's be honest, he did not have a good year. And he didn't have
I
a good
agree.
year until the playoffs. So it's
And
hard
he
to
was also coming off a down year prior, technically, if you want to get technical with this.
right. I mean, yeah, The thing with him, you always resort to the home run numbers. I mean, going from 46 to 34, I mean, yeah, it's a regression, but who else is hitting that many home runs? Let's be honest, like consistently. So we'll talk about that later, but yeah.
We have this comment from Rudy Rodriguez. And I actually kind of agree with him. If you could get some, I mean, the AAV is very high, it'd be $30 million a year. Give Alonso 4 years, 120 million. Doesn't take, it's not a long term contract. I would sign up for that. And even if you had to give a Pete an out after, I'll say this: if what's holding up the contract, which supposedly he's at 200 plus million, the Mets are at 90 million. But I don't know who else is really invested. But if you can get Pete on a 3 or 4 year contract with a 1 year opt out, be my guest. Come back, play one more year, because unless he goes crazy off, which obviously he showed diminishing returns over the last couple of years, that could work out in the Mets' favor.
Right. The thing with him, he turns down 3 for 90. I just don't know in good conscience if he's even going to go up to a 4th year at this point. He does seem to be firm on the 5 or 6 years. Not to say he's going to get it. I think Pete's going to wait and find and test this market and see it's just not there. It's just not. I mean, the Giants could swoop in, the Cubs could swoop in, the Mariners. We've gone over all these random teams, but at the end of the day, he's a Met, and that's it. So
We
I
have
think it's going to be crazy. Yeah, yeah.
We have this comment from Edward. Can we get? Oh, sorry, these are very small on my screen. I gotta get someone that blows this thing up, and comments are flowing in. Can we get Alonso, Bregman, and Iglesias? What's really interesting, Dan, is I almost feel, and I made a video about this yesterday. A lot of hate, like 100
I
comments
hate
worth of
lately,
hate.
bro.
But
Yeah,
we
no
gotta
doubt.
keep it a buck here. I actually think that Bregman is a strong possibility for this team. And if you sign him, odds are Alonso is gone. But here's the caveat. If Alonso is willing to take a 3-year contract with a 1-year opt out, say that 90 million, say you give him a little more, say you give him 3 years, 93 million, which gives him 31 million a year, which is well above what he should get, but it's short enough where maybe he plays first, and you say Viento. Maybe he plays first and DHs, and then you bring Bregman in, and Vientos kind of plays third and first. I don't know if that's plausible, but you can almost kiss him goodbye after 1 year if he opts out, and if he doesn't, you have an expensive DH. But I've been saying this time and time again. Look at all the great teams around MLB. They all have those crazy DH power hitters. You have Schwarber, who usually DHs with Philly, so can play left, but he's awful. You have Stanton with the Yankees. You had Ohtani with the Dodgers. I mean, you go up and down Major League Baseball. The really high-end teams are not using that spot as a rotation. And I feel like cheap teams do that. It's a way to say, oh, we want to give our guys break. No, we don't want to spend $17 million on a legitimate DH.
Right. A couple things with that. I think with Alonso and the opt out the first year, like that'd be the ideal. I don't know if he would play well under an opt out like that. Like, see how he played last year in a contract year. If you put an opt out over his head, it's probably going to be a lot of the same thing. There's going to be an opt out in Pete Alonso's contract, whether it's after the first, the second, whatever it is, there's going to be one. But it's also a win win for the team and for the player. I mean, the player does great. He opts out. That's awesome. If not, okay, you're still on the team. Like, it's good for the player. So I think for Pete, he's in a good spot. I just think he wants the years, Ray. I don't think 93 million is going to be the difference. Like, it has to be 5, 6 years, 130.
Right.
That's probably about where you're sitting right now. And then with Bregman, yeah, the versatility's there. I'm not ready to sign up on Brett Beatty and Mauricio at third base. Keep Vientos there. I mean, if Bregman's here, great. That's definitely an addition. But you're subtracting Vientos, who is developing. So it's
I
that
agree.
fun
And you
line.
see the videos, the hype videos. He's looking. He actually looks so in those, and it might just be the videos because we got to be very careful. I mean, we were told Vogelback lost like 40 pounds, and he showed up to spring training. But
We'll go back.
yeah. But Vientos looks slim. He looks agile at third base. Now, it never was that he couldn't fire the ball across the diamond or get to the ball to his left or his right. I think it's more of his mobility. So if he sacrifices a little bit of his strength to gain a little bit more athleticism, maybe he gets to a ball a little further up the line.
Made
That's
5
kind of what
errors
I'm
this year.
thinking. I want to really quickly get to, I know I said I would get to this, the Santander statistics. That way there is no
41 home runs.
I mean, it's right there. I just go straight off OPS. I mean, I'm not going to break down all the numbers, but
Right.
he had a little bit of a down year last year, 776
44 home runs.
OPS.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a home run machine, and that's what you want at DH. 814 the year before, 797. I mean, Dan, as we all know, this guy's a complete butcher in the field when it comes to it. So, what are your actual thoughts on Santander? And then I want to get to some of these other comments.
I mean, he's solid, right? Like as a DH option kind of thing. Like same thing with Jerickson Profar. I mean, both of these guys, like switch hitting or not, like they're still valuable.
Doesn't he scare the hell out of you, Profar?
Definitely. But just take Winker back at this point. Like, what are we debating, Ray? You know,
Dan,
that's it.
No,
I know you don't.
Dan, no.
Winker's
We're gonna do this.
We have Juan Soto. We don't need anything else. Like, give me Iglesias, give me Winker. We're good.
I like the Iglesias pickup. I would absolutely give him a contract. Say you're going to be MacGyver again. You're going to play short, second, third, maybe left or right if we need you in an emergency situation. But I am out on Winker. Here's the thing with Winker. He's never had an 800 OPS. Fans seem to forget the last 2 months of the season. I think he had 3 hits in the month of August. I want a stronger bat there. That's what I want. I want a stronger bat there. You already have 5 outfielders on this team.
That was a big hit in August against the Orioles, Ray. That walk-off was kind of crazy.
I know, but I need consistency out of that. It's you're either going to consistently hit home runs. I mean, don't make me pull it off. Let's keep it going. We got this from Goomba, and I actually kind of agree with this. I would prefer this, as I've been saying, that we are still an ace away, or at least a frontline starter. If you go into the season with this rotation, we are worse than last year. Call a spade a spade. We don't know what Montas is. Severino had a 3 ERA. Quintana was absolutely lights out down the stretch. We don't have him. I saw a rumor today possibly he might get a 2-year, $30 million contract. I don't think I'm doing that. I would offer a 1-year contract because obviously of his age. But this is from Goomba. Pete, I believe they meant to say trade Pete for an trade Pete. Oh, I guess get Pete, trade for an ace, reel back the pen arms, Vladdy next year, and we're ready for war. So what do you think about that? I mean, I'm guessing what they're trying to say here is let Pete go, trade for an ace, and then wait till next year.
Yeah, I mean, letting Pete go, that's just a whole nother thing. I mean, let's talk about the ace, right? Yeah, we definitely need an ace on this team. Manaea is a great 2. He's ideally probably a 3, but he's a great 2 for right now. Senga, same thing. He could be the ace, but I have to see him be one. Sproat could be the ace of the future, but he's not it now. So who's the ace of the Mets? Is it Luis Castillo that we trade for?
Right.
I don't know. Pablo Lopez, Dylan Cease. I mean, these names, it's like, are the Mets going to do it? Like, would they have done it by now? I think that's a real question. Like, would they have done it by now?
I think the trades are going to happen more once everybody's off the board. That's just me. I mean, how many guys have actually gotten moved outside of Garrett Crochet,
right,
who they were desperately trying to trade? We have this from George checking in. Thanks, George, for the comment. I've posted a few times already. I feel like we should either trade for Vladdy or wait till next year. What is your opinion in trading for Vladdy? I mean, here's my thing. I'll make it quick. And I said it yesterday on my video. David Stearns cannot afford to wait till February to add Peter, our first baseman, to this team, because we've already seen this with Scott Boras in the past. He's more than willing to go into the regular season, and he did with 2 front-end starters last year, at the risk of burning their entire season to make a point. I think there's still a possibility if the Giants are really not interested, because we haven't heard an offer from the Giants or Seattle. And I think a lot of teams are going to say, we're not going to have Scott Boras do our bidding for us. He's a New York Met, because at the end of the day, they're going to outbid us. There's a possibility that Boras carries Alonso into the regular season, and at that point, I do not want anything to do with him. We've seen it time and time again. When players miss spring training, they're a month or 2 behind, and I'm not waiting for July for Pete to show up. So maybe that's where the Vladdy situation comes into play. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, Boras has the reins on this negotiation right now. It's not Pete in control. Like Boras, whatever Pete said to him, he said, go get me X number, go get me 180 million, right? That's Boras. This is going to be Boras straight until March, probably, until something happens. And I agree with you. Pete's going to have to step in at some point if he wants to really be a Met, because Boras is just going to go for the highest dollar. You'll get the Giants involved. You'll get the Mariners involved. It's going to be things that we don't want. So we'll see. But Pete's got to be back. There's no other way. Like, Vlad's great. I'm not trading for him. I'm not giving up capital now when I can just go in free agency and we can get both. Truthfully, if Pete's going to DH next year or in the next couple years, like we all think, Vlad's the perfect first baseman. We don't need Vientos as the DH. Like, I'll take Pete.
And that makes sense if you're not considering, or if you don't bring Bregman in, because at the end of the day, Vientos is making next to nothing, and he's under control for a while. I see that comment from Zach. Yes, I believe that would be $50 million per year. I'll look it up on Spot Track, but because it's not an official signing yet, it won't be up there. So maybe in our next live, we'll address that where we could see. It will tell you on Spot Track, guys. If you go to Spot Track and put in a player's name, it'll tell you their salary and what their actual salary is, counting towards the tax, and that's what it would include the signing bonus. I'm pretty sure, yes, it'd be $50+ million. We'll keep it going. We have a couple of the storylines to get to. We just have comments galore coming. I don't want to miss anybody. You have this from Goomba again. I think we should trade for Castillo now before Sasaki picks his team. Once that happens, the trade market for starting pitching will go crazy by desperate teams. And if we get both. If not, we don't get an ace. So, Dan, what are your thoughts on Sasaki? Do you think we actually have a legitimate shot? Supposedly Heyman came out and said, obviously, San Diego and the Dodgers are the favorite. If anything, it's almost like the Juan Soto signing. As long as the Yankees don't get him. If he went to Boston, I would have been upset, but not crazy upset, because he's going to hurt the Yankees. I do not want Sasaki ending up on LA. So what are your thoughts on him? Where do you think he's going to end up?
I don't think he goes to the Dodgers, Ray. I think it's the Padres, realistically. Wild card, definitely the Mets. The Yankees are not going to get him. I do think the Mets are a serious player. We've all been saying it just because of the whole Senga thing, and that's a real thing, but also the fact that he posted before age of 25. He's not in it for the money, and he's basically going to be the Mets rotation. And you can promise him kind of that, hey, these are your keys, go take it. Like, that's great for him. So I don't know. I think the Mets are really in play, but watch out for the small market teams. And I just think the Padres and Yu Darvish, it's just a big attraction for him.
How much do you buy into that whole situation with Yu Darvish and the effect on Sasaki, and what his agent was talking about with the media, that he didn't get along with the media?
That's a real thing. Because you look at Shohei Ohtani too, the Japanese media and Shohei are not really having the best relationship either. So it's something with that. And also to just, where does he want to be? And he's looked up to Darvish for so long. He won the World Baseball Classic with Darvish. Like, it just makes sense. But
I agree.
And again, Ray, not a lot of things always make sense. So who knows, right? Who knows?
So it's interesting. We have this comment from Fernando Rodriguez. Guys, I'm trying to catch up to the comments. I'm probably like 100 behind. And I think a lot of fans feel this way. I got a couple DMs from people saying, was this intentional? Was this Pete being selfish? I lost a great deal of respect for Pete when he didn't have the class to say his teammates Lindor and Nimmo also deserved to have been selected for the All-Star team, since everyone knew he didn't. And I actually agree. I think Pete being selected was absolutely an overreach. I think Lindor absolutely deserved it at that point. Do you have any feelings towards this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, Pete shouldn't have been the All-Star this year. He just got chosen. It should have been Nimmo if we really want the truth. But at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. I'm not going to lose sleep over that, Ray, but I hear what he's saying. I do.
Shout out to Ashton in the chat. I see you commenting, man, interacting. Just trying to get through this really quick so we can move on to our next
we
topic.
shouldn't lose respect for Pete. Like, we could be a little ticked off that he turned down 3 years and $1 million, but don't lose respect. I wouldn't go there yet.
Well, here's the thing, Evan. Evan says if Sasaki takes his time, all options may be gone. Sasaki has a deadline to sign, guys. It's not like he could take the 23rd, right? Is of January. So he only has 3 weeks ish to make a decision. So that can't necessarily carry over.
The 15th, the period begins, and he got posted 45 days or whatever it was since then. So time's ticking. I mean, he's hearing out all these teams, right, which is great. But
Right.
let's be honest, he's probably going to the West Coast. It just makes the most sense.
We have this from Christopher Forby. Excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that right. What about Trevor Bauer as an option? I think the Mets are staying very clear of Trevor Bauer. I just think that
It's a PR nightmare. Yeah, sure, he might go on BT and Sal and say he's a top 15 pitcher in the world. That might be true, but it's not worth the headache. Sean Manaea is better.
our boy Andy checking in
Andy.
from X, Andy the Angry Albanian, my guy, Sasaki will be a Met. He's been riding people in the comments section all over X lately. I've been noticing that. That's funny. All right, so we can
He might be a Met. I'm not going to rule it out.
So today, the New York Mets made the Sean Manaea contract official. David Stearns released a small statement on Sean Manaea. Let's just oh, sorry, hold on. I'm not used to doing this live. Let's get to this. Let's get to this really quick. Sean was an integral part of what the team accomplished last season. He impressed on the field, leading the rotation in the clubhouse with his character, attitude, and composure. I am excited to watch him continue to flourish over the next few years. We really didn't take a deep dive into this contract, which, Dan, I think is a crazy steal. Think about this. All we kept hearing is Sean Manaea is getting 4 years. Oh my gosh, he's getting 5 years. I could see him getting $90 million over 4 years. That's all we kept hearing. And I'm like, I said this personally. There is zero shot I want him for 4 years. But 3 years at that money deferred, it's almost like if by year 3 it ain't working, thanks for your service, Sean, we're going to move on. They have the capability of doing that now. And I think he is going to repeat what he did last year. I think there's something really to be said about this pitching lab. Jeremy Hefner, and think about this. It's his second year in this lab now and with Hefner. So maybe he can even improve on those numbers that he had last year. Thoughts?
100%. I mean, he got the same contract Nathan Eovaldi got. So you could look at them both ways. I'm really excited to watch Manaea pitch this year again. A full season of that new arm slot is going to be great for him. And yeah, you talked about the deferred money. I mean, that's awesome. $23 million that the Mets were able to defer. So we talked about earlier, are the Mets able to defer money? Yeah, they are. And it's great to see when they do it because they had to get Manaea back. And I think there'll be deferred money in Pete's case. It almost feels like a necessity at this point. You're going to have to find whether it's a signing bonus, whether it's deferred money, club option, team option, something to get Pete back in Queens because what they did with Manaea was great. But they're going to have to work that same magic contractually with Pete as well.
You think Pete's looking at that Manaea contract saying he's 3 years older than me and he got offered a 3-year contract? Like, I almost feel like, I don't know if Pete's the kind of guy to get disrespected or feel a certain type of way. But when he's 30, he's like, wait a second. I've been here my entire career. I was here with the downs, the ups. I'm about to set records. I hit the big home run last year. This guy Manaea was here for 1 year. You're giving him a 3-year contract. You're willing to sign him till he's 36. You're only willing to sign me till I'm 33. You think that comes into play at all?
For Pete, I'm not so sure because if it really did Ray, then he's not coming back to the Mets because Soto got $800 million. So I don't know if he's looking at other players' contracts like that. He might be looking at, 3 for 75, 25 on the surface. Can I get 25 for 5? Can I get that? Like, yeah,
Right.
you know, that might be what he's thinking. But
shout out to our guy over at the Subway to Shea podcast. Love their work, what they do. They have their own podcast. If you're not following them, make sure you give them a follow over on X. They put out good content, similar content to us, but very good content nonetheless, because we put out good content, I feel. Manaea deal is definitely a steal considering the rumored numbers that were thrown out there. 100%, my friend. I don't know if that was it's hard to defer, Dan. What the hell is agent talk and what's not agent talk? Like, we know John Heyman is the mouthpiece for Scott Boras. Let's call a spade here. That's why, look, what happened on WFAN with them, I thought was a little unacceptable with what was said by Keith McPherson. But at the end of the day, was there a little truth to that? Maybe. I don't know.
I'm in between a rock and a hard place with both of them, Ray. You know that. It's tough. It's a weird situation.
I agree with Goomba here. If Manaea and Senga get hurt again, look at what's left. Dodgers, Phillies, Braves, Padres aren't losing sleep about the Mets. We need to get we need good and reliable. Dan, this is what I've been saying.
Yep.
This was my argument against Winker. Now I'm going to bring it up to you really quick. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but there's no team in MLB that said, "Oh my gosh, it's Jesse Winker coming up to the plate." Never. That's never been iterated in the clubhouse. Now you say that about Pete Alonso when he's hot, for sure. Juan Soto, for sure. Lindor, for sure. Nimmo when he's hot, for sure. Jesse Winker, I don't think he scares anybody. We have a few of those. Even when Alvarez gets hot, and I think you're with me. I'm expecting a massive leap when it comes to Francisco Alvarez this year. I want to see, give me 225 and give me 20 bombs. I will 100% take that from the catching position.
Yeah. Winker's interesting, right? Because I think he does the intangibles really well. Like he's rounding second, he's talking smack to Willy Adames. Like that's the great stuff that Winker brings. He brings the clutch home runs. I think if he plays enough, he's a really good bat to ball hitter. He's always squaring up the ball. Think about it. It was game 4 of the championship series. Everyone was saying the Mets have to do something. Winker comes up with the bases loaded, almost hits a grand slam to right field. The next day, Mendoza makes the choice. All right, I'm putting Winker in. And they won that game. So having Winker, that ability to see if he's hot one night, plug and play, if Soto has an off night or needs rest, like you have Winker, not Marte, which is the alternative. So I don't know. It's going to be a platoon at DH most likely. I just don't know who.
So I see this comment also from Subway to Shea. Hope I didn't lose it here. He said Pete should be looking at the Walker deal. That's the one that set the tone for what he'll be making. Well, the Mets already offered him supposedly $10 million a year over that, right? 3 for 90. He got 3 for 60. Walker's 34. We also got to admit, Walker's more athletic than Alonso, way better defensively. More of a rounded player, I would say, than Pete. Pete is the big stick that you have in the middle of your lineup. You want to talk about that?
Christian Walker's great, Ray. You're not going to hear much pushback from me, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't think he's on Pete's level in terms of the ceiling, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I just don't think they're the same player in that regard. But yeah, on the surface, they're the same player.
Let's see what Zach said. Ray, look, I get the positive. Ray, you're wrong. Winker kills us. We said it when he was on the Reds and the Nationals. Look, let him go back and play for those teams.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Winker, I could see.
Look, Carlos Avila. Winker has to be back, Dan.
Yep. I'm saying, right? They want him back. I mean, because you can get him cheap too. You don't have to get Jock Peterson $37 million over 2 years. Like you can get Winker back 2 for 20 if you want.
My partner in crime over here, Pat Dunn. Is there another suitor for Pete out there? Dan, obviously we keep talking about San Francisco, maybe Seattle, which I don't really think Seattle is, unless they move Castillo, which one takes the other. I mean, they're not going to sign Alonso right now and still have Castillo on their roster because then it diminishes his trade value. Everyone knows they're trying to move off that contract. But then if you trade Castillo, you lose your leverage with Alonso. So you're kind of stuck, like what you said, a rock and a hard place. So Are there any other suitors you could think of?
Mike Puma had an interesting piece just kind of throwing out landing spots. I mean, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Angels, the Rangers, the Cubs, the Mariners. That's about the market for Pete at this point, other than the Mets. I don't think any of those teams really make sense. Maybe the Cardinals, right? Maybe the Giants, something like that. I think the Giants more so. One, because they're willing to spend. And two, I just see so many Giants fans in my comment section for whatever reason, like trying to plead Buster Posey into signing Pete. It's like they want their guy. They want their big fish. Back to one of your original points, right? Whether it's Corbin Burnes, whether it's Pete. They got Willy Adames, but they want to build a core too. And they got the other guy, Kim, or one of the other international free agents last year. One of the first signings. I forget who it was, the outfielder. But yeah, so they're willing to spend.
While I'm scrolling through these comments, give me your initial thoughts on the Gleyber Torres contract. I mean, I think he's going to a place where he might flourish, Dan. I don't know. Not everybody's built for New York. So what do you think about that?
Jung Ho Lee, by the way. Yeah, so
Hmm.
interesting about the Tigers, right? Because you see today, Gleyber Torres, that's great for him. But they're infield, right? Because then you ask, is Bregman fit into that infield? I do think he does. And I do think Bregman is going to be a Detroit Tiger. If he's not a New York Met, he's probably going to be a Tiger. Colt Keith's going to play first. Spencer Torkelson's going to get reps at DH and play first base. I mean, the fall off of Spencer Torkelson is unbelievable. The number one overall
No.
pick, 2020. Guy's
What
fallen
the
off
hell
the map.
happened?
Yeah, it's just he's fallen off a map. Javi Baez will be their shortstop. Glaber, their second baseman. And they got Kerry Carpenter, kind of that utility. But their third base is wide open, Ray. So you got the AJ Hinch connection with the Tigers. I do think Bregman's going to end up in Detroit.
So we have this from Andy, the angry Albanian, checking back in. Andy, Pete is going to have to settle for a short-term deal, 3 to 4 year deal with the first year as an opt-out. The money he wants, 200 plus million, and the years 6 or 7 is not happening. But more importantly, potential teams for Alonso are just not there, or it would have happened already. I agree with him. We kept hearing, Dan, that Washington was getting involved. I don't think Washington wanted any part of it. Washington's got some nice young pieces. We all know that, but they're still years away from competing. And anyone who's signing Alonso right now wants to win this year, next year, and the year after that. That is it. Because by age 34, 35, I don't think it's responsible to think that Alonso is going to be doing what he's doing these past couple years.
Right. The Nationals, it's an uphill climb, just given look at the NL East. I mean, the Mets got way better. The Braves still going to be good. The Phillies really good. It's an uphill climb for them. I think they're not as far away to competing as we think, though. I mean, all those pieces they got are finally becoming their
Mhm.
own from the Soto trade a couple years ago. I mean, CJ Abrams, James Wood, like these guys are solid baseball players, but I just don't see it. The National League East is way too good.
It's
Texas and the
loaded right
Cubs,
now.
yeah. The Cubs are interesting for Alonso. Don't count them out. I mean,
Yeah,
definitely
we
don't.
got. Oh, you can see the super chats, right?
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
not sure.
You
Sorry,
could.
a second.
Yeah.
All right, so I pulled that up. Yeah, Zach put Texas in the Cubs. It's so strange because the Cubs are mind-boggling of organization to me because you trade for Kyle Tucker. You're like, that's it. We're all in. He's on a 1 year contract. We gave up some nice pieces. We're gonna bring him in and we're gonna go for it. And then they go trade Cody Bellinger, who could be an MVP candidate and is on his best years when he's only under contract for 2 years. So first of all, why would you make that trade? Second of all, why the heck would Kyle Tucker re-sign with you guys if you're not committed to it now? That's why I don't think they're going to commit to going after a guy like Pete Alonso. Because think about this. They were shedding Bellinger was a salary shedding move, Dan. They
Right.
were they were so adamant about the Yankees taking on so much of the contract that when the Yankees threw it back, we don't want to take the whole contract. They took a little tiny piece, but that was a salary shedding move. Otherwise, why are you doing that in a win now situation? So for me, the Cubs make zero sense when it comes to Pete Alonso.
It's weird. Before Soto, we would have said that the Cubs probably would have re-signed Tucker. I just think he's going to be this exorbitant amount of money he's going to ask. If he goes 40-40 this year, Ray, he's going to ask for 500 million, 600 million maybe. I think 500 probably for him. Same thing with Vlad.
Mhm.
Both those guys. I mean, yeah, the Cubs are in a weird spot, but their division's getting really good really quick. I mean, the
I
Pirates are
know, and you'll get left
yeah,
behind. We saw what happened to us.
right, right.
You have this from Red Horse Adventures. I'm interested in the next tier of off-season trades, which we all know. David Stearns trading Davey. That's what they called him in Milwaukee. Not really. I just made that up. McNeil and Marte should be gone. I'm a who and what are we seeking? I God, Dan. I'll let you start off, and then I'll circle back.
In my ideal world, Ray, you could flip Marte for Jordan Montgomery, get him in the pitching lab. He's pitched in big games. Those salaries
Mhm.
match up very evenly. It doesn't seem like there's traction there. I don't know why. I guess the Mets just, for whatever reason, they don't like these older pitchers. But then you look at Manaea and they gave him a 3 year deal. So I don't know what they're doing with that. But yeah, that's how you get rid of Marte. McNeil, you're probably stuck with McNeil. Like, no one's going to take that contract unless you're the Mariners, and even then, I don't even think they would.
Well, let me ask you this. He's got what, the 2 years with the club option afterwards, 15.5 million. So you essentially have him for 2 years at 31 million.
It's
Think what the Mets do with Jeremy Hefner. They think they could revitalize pretty much anyone. That's why they bring in Montas, Severino, Manaea, you name it. We're bringing in the. Is there anyone around the league who's got the hitting quote unquote guru that may say, you know what, I could fix McNeil? Because I heard stories from a source familiar with the Mets organization. I'll leave it at that. That McNeil has a really poor attitude. He doesn't let people tell him what to do because he thinks that he's a batting champion. I think it's a big reason why they brought in Daniel Murphy to help around. You see right around because those are guys that are well respected outside of the current baseball players. I think there might be a team out there that would take McNeil and say, you know what, for $15 million a year, we have the potential to get a hitting champion. He's only a couple years removed, and maybe they see a hitch in his swing or something like that.
I think there's still some valuable, parts of McNeil's game because he always gets saved by like the miraculous second half and everyone gets hype and then he gets hurt or something happens along the line. He was a former batting champion. Like that's still value to his name. But again, that was during shift baseball when it was a different game. So I'm not so sure McNeil can adapt. He hasn't. And I just don't know what team's going to take on that contract. We'll see. I mean, he could be the opening day second baseman and he could hit 300 out of the gate and, we hit the lottery. So
we got this from Jay Beretti. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry, Jay, if I'm not. Pete is a Met, 4 years, 100 million. And then you sign Vlad next year, as Dan said. Pete, Vlad could take turns at first base DH. I don't think that's really realistic. I don't think Vlad Guerrero at 27 years old is going to be okay DHing. I think he wants to be on the field. He wants to be a superstar. I think he wants to be a part of New York. I also think the Yankees are going to be heavily involved in those negotiations. I would be shocked. And Dan, you might agree with me. I would be hella shocked if either Kyle Tucker or Vladdy is not a Yankee come 2026.
wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't see that, Ray. But
You don't think either one of them?
no, I don't.
Wow. Okay.
I just maybe Tucker, but I just don't even. I just don't know. We'll see, right? I mean, anything's possible, but the Yankees have their own outfielders coming up. We'll see. I mean, Vlad's interesting, but he's also been saying that he wants to destroy the Yankees. He doesn't like the Yankees. Like, we'll see if there's any
better
truth.
team than go to Boston or the Mets.
Right. So we'll see if there's truth to that. To Jay's point, 4 years, 100 million. Yeah. I mean, we were saying that at the beginning of the offseason. They should have got it done. But if he's turning down 3 for 90, I don't know if he's taking 4 for 100, but we'll see. It's uncharted waters we're getting into.
Right. We have this from Kid Cantandela. Guys, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your names right. I'm sorry if I'm not. You guys all have some crazy usernames, but hey, we're Metcast. What the hell is that? Vientos on first this year, and then go to Vladdy next, and then go get Vladdy next year. I don't think the Mets are, especially David Stearns. If we know anything about David Stearns, Dan, he wants defense, and there's no way he is moving Vientos back and forth. They're going to have him develop at one position. That's why a lot of my fans don't want to admit it. We have so much leverage when it comes to this Pete Alonso negotiation, and I tweeted it out. I think he royally screwed up. I'll see if I can pull up the tweet while Dan's talking. Essentially, it says Pete Alonso needs the Mets more than the Mets need him, because who the heck else is signing him right now? So I feel like, and not only that, Dan, they have his replacement in the organization ready to swap there. I think we all could agree Vientos is an okay third baseman at best right now. Not saying he can't develop, but that's what he is. He'll cost you some games here or there. I think he could be an elite defensive first baseman. He's got the great picking skills at third base. He's more agile. He'll get the balls further in the hole than a guy like Pete would. So that's kind of where Pete loses his leverage. If the Mets didn't have Vientos do what Vientos did last year, there's nobody else in the organization that's going to be going to first base. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's probably about it. I mean, Vientos, it's interesting because going back to that point with Vlad, like you could have three of them if you really want to make Pete the DH as he's getting older. Vlad's primarily the first baseman. Vientos is the third baseman. You could also see a world where Vlad plays third. I mean, he's taking reps there. It's possible you want to move Vientos to DH. I know a lot of people push back because he's so young, and you don't want to do that to him in his career right now. So it's interesting what they'll do. The DH spot's wide open as far as I'm concerned moving forward. He's saying, fellas, on our DH on this team, or we have to still go find one. We do. We have to still go find one. I mean, it's either you want a lefty and a righty, right? So right now it's probably Marte because we added Soto. So Marte slides out of
I
right
agree.
field. And then it goes back to that, who's the lefty DH? Is it Winker? It was supposed to be Peterson, right? We were talking about that. That fell through. Santander, Profar. I mean, these guys, they're going to be off the board soon.
Do you think at the end of games they're going to do the defensive replacement for Soto and put Taylor out there?
I do.
I assume that's something they talked to him about because some guys actually don't like that.
It could be for like if Nimmo starts. I don't know. I expect him to be good too, but if he's hurt or something like that, he still has the planters. Like you could see
Right.
Tyrone Taylor play a lot. You could see Marte even get some reps, which is it's interesting. But
I see that's where that would be the only reason why I'd bring Winker back is because you had no Nimmo's got his issues. Soto, look, hell of a hitter. Love the guy. Absolutely love the guy. But he's a butcher defensively. So
you
that's
could
the
put
only reason
McNeil
why
out
you
there
would
too.
carry that many outfielders.
You could put McNeil out there too. And they want to maybe see maybe Beatty goes out there. I mean, if Beatty wants to find a way on the team, it's probably not at third base. Let's be honest. So either second base has been floated, the outfield, even Vientos has been floated to play second base. Like these are not good ideas, but it's what you have to do if you're talking about
Bregman.
right. If you're talking about
Just
Bregman, yeah,
saying.
you have to think about that.
So we have this from John. Trade for Yandy Diaz. I'm not the biggest Yandy Diaz guy. I know you are. Let's hear it. What's your reasoning?
He's all right, Ray. I mean, I don't know if he's definitely someone we could trade for. I just don't know.
He'd be like plan F.
Right. Yeah, it'd be really far down the line. It's a great player, but I just don't see if he fits into the Mets,
Kevin says something similar. Trade for Yandy, sign Tanner Scott and Jack Flaherty. I will say this. I wouldn't mind Tanner Scott on this team.
Me too.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know about you.
of course.
Jack Flaherty, I think his better years are behind him. He'd be another meh signing, in my opinion. We need a frontline starter in this rotation. I will say it till the cows come home. Senga, in my opinion, is a number 2. You have Manaea, who's a number 2. You have Montas, who should be your sixth pitcher who's going to be in this rotation. I mean, we're going to roll with a 6-man rotation. We're going to have guys like Tyler McGill starting, who should be not with the major league team. That's just my opinion.
Right.
I mean, when we look around the National League East, we are third in pitching staff. I don't think there's any debate about that.
We might be last, Ray. Let's be honest. We might be last.
Yeah. And and here's what's even more worrisome to me. Look at our starting staff right now. Senga in his 30s. Manaea in his 30s. Montas, 1-year deal, 30s.
They're bridging the gap.
Look at our farm system.
Right.
You have 2 pitchers. You have 1 elite level player coming through. We all know in Sproat. You have 1 okay, and then there's really nobody else behind that.
Jonah
The
Tom.
Mets have done such a poor job of developing pitchers over the last 3 years, which is a shocker because for years, that's all we were known for. The Matt Harveys, the trading for Wheelers, the Steven Matzes of the world, the Noah trading for Syndergaard, developing him through the R.A. Dickey trade. We were known for that. There's a gap in that development right now. It seems like everybody's holding on to those pitching prospects like they're gold, like they're candy, because look at what it cost. Look at what the Red Sox just gave up for Garrett Crochet, who's really had 1 complete great year. 1. Look at his stats. He's a very good pitcher. No doubting that. But they gave up potentially 2 top 100 prospects. One of them, in my prospect rankings, one of them's a top 25 player in MLB in the MLB pipeline. Like
Kyle
that's
Teal.
what it costs. Say it again.
Kyle Teal.
Yeah.
Voice cry, yeah. Teal's great. Mawa kid, catcher, lefty batter, disgusting. But yeah, Ray, I hear you about the whole prospect thing. Brandon Sproat feels untouchable. You know, you got to build around him going forward. Listen, in a couple years down the line, you're going to have Christian Scott back. You'll have Sproat. It's going to start to look like 2015. That's kind of the goal. You have 5 solid, real starters who you can build around. Jonah Tong coming up. Blade Tidwell coming up. I don't know if these guys are going to get rotation spots. David Peterson's probably been promised a spot now for at least this year. I hope he earns it moving forward. David Peterson's awesome. And that's about it. I mean, Senga's getting older. Manaea's getting older. Flaherty, yeah, I just don't know if I can get behind Jack Flaherty at this point. He does. I think they gave him the qualifying. Oh, no, they didn't. Teoscar was the only Dodger they gave. Right.
Here's how it works with the qualifying offer. If you are traded in season, you are no longer eligible for qualifying offer. So no, Jack is. That would be the only reason. You want to tell me? Look, you want to tell me you're giving him a 2-year contract? What? You know, a little less than Bueller type money? I might be interested in that only because what we've seen him do in the past, Dan. But I'm not looking for any long-term stuff. What is he? 29 years old, I believe. I got to double check that.
He's not worth it. I mean, back injuries. I think
another guy who can never stay healthy.
A lot of Mets fans look at him and say, "Oh, he killed us in the NLCS. Like, he has the secret sauce against the Mets. We got to get him on our team." You don't want him. Jack Flaherty, he's great. He's a great pitcher, but he's not going to hold up. He's going to be like a Sonny Gray. And yeah, Sonny Gray's been great since he's
All right, here we go.
But
I'll tell you right now. To your point. Last year, total 28 starts, almost a full season. 2023, 7. 2023, 27. 22, he had 8. 21, he had 15. 20, he had 9. He is a walking injury, this guy. Like that is we don't need.
I have to throw this out, Ray. We're not because I am against this idea at the end of the day, but I know a lot of Mets fans want this. Jacob deGrom, is that still a thing, or are we moving on forever? Because if you want to pull the trigger, it has to be between now and the trade deadline of next year. That's it.
Do you think he really wants to be here, though, deGrom?
If it's a good enough, because Chris Young's his agent, he has that Mets tie. I'm not saying that means anything, but if you promised him, come retire a Met, come win a ring, I mean, it's just
a lot of money, right?
I know.
What does he have left on his contract? Do we know?
He has 115 over 3, something like that.
Let's take a peek. We got it right here. Like a
no
wizard.
Yeah, Albeit he's always been against the. I hear you. I do. I'm not gonna,
Oh my God!
Tough. But listen,
we're talking a Scherzer type deal because around the same age, he's 37, 38, 39. He's got 40, 38, 37, and then in 2028, he's got a $20 million club option.
2 things have to happen, Ray. 3 things. The Mets have to be really good, which we hope. The Rangers have to be really bad, and deGrom has to be really good. If those 3 things happen, then you're going to hear more talks about it because the Rangers are going to want to get rid of that salary. They're not going anywhere. They bring in Jock Peterson. They bring in all these guys, Jake Berger this, Nathan Eovaldi that. If they fall short, they're going to look at deGrom as the first contract they want to get rid of, similar with the Mariners right now and Luis Castillo. So something to think about. Yeah.
So Andy has this here for us. Acuna is and will be starting at second base. I think there's definitely look. I'll say this: if Acuna could somehow, and for some reason, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't think the Mets scouts are in love with this kid. I like him because of his speed, his heart, everything like that. But if he could develop into a legitimate starting second baseman for this team, that is when the Mets can go out and really really invest in starting pitching. Because if you have Mark Vientos at third making next to nothing, you have Acuna at second making a couple $100,000 a year. You could pay Pete, you could pay Lindor. Nimmo's already, think of what Nimmo's making right now. It's actually not that much considering what the rest of the field is getting. You have no money spent in center field. Hopefully, either Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert could play there. You're paying Soto already. That opens up the entire pocketbook for Cullen to spend on starting pitching. If you find a suitor for McNeil, and that's, I know you said not a lot of people want the McNeil contract. One thing that you said rang a bell in my head. Not only does he have the potential to be a hitting champion, which we've seen before, but think about this. He could play left, right, second, or third, and probably play first base. I don't know about that, but we've seen him play second, third, left, and right, and play them pretty well. And a lot of teams value versatility. Versatility is very valuable nowadays.
Very.
That might be the reason why the Mets don't trade him.
Right. I just think Acuna can give you a lot of those same tools. I know you don't think he's ready, but I think he's ready, Ray. I think he is. You know, I think it's just that simple. Like we saw at the end of the year, he held his own. He hit for power. He had a 500 average at one point. Like he's a kid and he didn't make any errors. He was great in the field, ran the bases well, great clubhouse guy. Brother of Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, like the list goes on and on. So I don't know. I think it's second base is Acuna's to be had. When Vlad becomes a free agent and the Mets are in need of a first baseman, there is no way the Yankees are getting him. Those days are over.
I actually agree with Ann. If Cullen says, I would like myself a Guerrero on this team. We already have his cousin in the farm system. Go get him. I think he is.
They could. Ray, they could. It'd be the best move. If the Mets want to win a World Series for a long time, you go get Vlad. But if you want to make the fans happy, you bring Pete. That's it.
We have, hold on, I'll get to Carlos's really quick. Look at Pat, Dan. Maybe we should do some home opener parking lot live stream.
We could.
I will do that. I promise you guys, I'll be there for the home opener. I always am. I don't care if I got to. I spent like 110 on standing room last year. All right. If it is under 50 degrees, there is no shot in hell I'm doing a live stream from the parking lot. But maybe our boy Nelson will be there. Maybe I'll reach out to Figueroa. Maybe he'll come and do a live stream with us. Stop by. That'd be pretty cool to stop by on the podcast. We got the whole setup. We have all the ability, cameras, mics, everything you need to do something like that. So maybe Pat, like I call Pat the IT guy, but he is really the heart and soul of MetCast, JetCast, our East End Media Group, which owns all these podcasts. He is the guy who works behind the scenes and a lot of the Jet stuff. We'll be coming on with the Mets stuff shortly, but Dan and I have been rolling with it. We have this from Carlos Avila. Mets should have signed Teoscar Hernandez and cheaper than Bregman. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Teoscar's great. I would have loved him on the Mets, truthfully. But again, just a guy that I never saw the Mets signing. Yeah, he's cheaper than Bregman, but Bregman's the better player. Like, if you're going to invest, you would do it on Bregman. Teoscar, we have Soto. Like, there's no need. I know we should have signed people. Like, we should have signed Garrett Crochet. You're going to hear that for a long time from me. And I would have given up Sproat, Williams, and Acuna. I would have done that. Or Sproat, Gilbert, and Acuna. Like, looking back, I'm not a prospect hugger. I just don't believe in it. You know, that's it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, our general manager does. And what I will say is, to your point, none of these guys are actually his.
Well, that too. That too.
You know, that's something we need to keep in perspective here. We have this. I love here. You could read this and answer this. I would love to get your opinion on this.
Does anyone actually believe that the Mets were considering bringing Beatty back to third and Vientos to first? I don't believe that for a minute. It was considered. It was definitely considered. Heyman,
I agree.
Yeah,
that's what I was told.
Right. The idea is if Alonso's here or he's not, like, you have these guys coming up at third base. You could put Vientos to first, right? Let's say Pete's gone. I mean, Mauricio definitely profiles to be a third baseman. Beatty's obviously a third baseman. It makes sense because you have to think about Mauricio. It's not about the Beatty pressure. It's about the Mauricio pressure. He's going to find his way into this lineup one way or the other. In the spaces that we do, it's been floated. He's going to try center field. Look out for that. So I don't know, but I do know one thing. When Mauricio's healthy, he's gonna be in this lineup. So that's the pressure that you hear these reports from.
You really think Mauricio could play? I look at it
Absolutely.
like this. When I see Mauricio, I see, and you very rarely see this at a third baseman. I see an intimidating third baseman. He is a big boy, people. If you haven't seen him, I got the pleasure of standing next to him at a couple camp games. He is huge,
Yeah.
and he's got thighs. Like, you ever hear Boomer Esiason in WFAN? That guy's got tree trunk thighs.
Yep.
That is Ronnie Mauricio. That's why when you see him swing the bat, he's like Mark Vientos, high exit velo guys. Just has a different sound when the ball hits the bat. Like, damn, what an absolute shame that he missed last year.
I
He
know.
was one of the young players, and I'm like, that guy's got the potential to be our Gary Sanchez when he was first coming up with the Yankees. Remember all the hype? That's why I'm not giving up on Mauricio. I don't think he'd be fit to play necessarily center field, but let me throw this idea out there. If Marte is going to be DHing against lefties, most likely, maybe you use him to steal a bag or two, a little speed off the bench. Maybe, just maybe, against hard righties every once in a while. I wonder if Mauricio could learn left field and you give Nimmo the DH spot for a lefty going against a righty. Because if that's true, we already know Mauricio could play a little bit of short, a little bit of second, a little third, a little left. Maybe he becomes our new Jeff McNeil, our Ben Zobrist type, where he doesn't necessarily have an official spot, but you know, Lindor, I'm sorry. Look, I love the guy. He can't be playing 160 games every year going into his 30s. I want him around for the long term. So if you want to tell me once every 3 weeks he's going to take a game, Mauricio could play short. You want to tell me against a hard lefty you're going to DH Vientos or whatever. Maybe he could pick up first base. You want to give Pete a day off. Pete's been an iron warrior for us. Another guy. Look, if we're going to sign him for 3 years, I am not playing him 155 games like we do every single year. That's where I can see Mauricio picking it up there because Mauricio's got a hard bat. Maybe he could play right field and allow Soto to DH every once in a while. If you're going to do the rotating DH like some of these teams do that I'm not a fan of, but if you're telling me it's a young guy like Mauricio who smacks the hell out of the ball, if you miss out on a Santander, you missed out on Jock Peterson, Vientos is not moving to DH, Pete Alonso's not moving to DH, maybe Ronnie Mauricio is that new MacGyver. If you could somehow figure out a point to move McNeil, Mauricio could slide right in there, and I think he's ready for it.
Right. And you ask yourself, when he first came up, he played second base, and you look at Mauricio, and you're right. He's not built like a second baseman. You look at Acuna, yeah, he's built like a second baseman. So
Yep.
I could see a world, Ray, where he's back off the ACL, and I think we all have to hold back on our expectations. He's probably not going to be ready till midway. It's not going to be opening day. You're seeing
You
Ronnie
think so?
Mauricio.
I saw something where they expect him to be a go at spring training. I might be wrong. Don't hold me to that.
Right. He'll be ready to play, like play baseball. Yeah, but
Right, but not 100%. Yeah, he's
right.
the kind of guy where you'll see he'll be left at extended spring training, something like that.
Right. So you ask yourself the question, unless Vientos is hitting 350 out of the gate or he looks amazing, right, for the first half of the season, you're going to see a platoon at third base with Mauricio and Vientos. That's my best guess. You're going to see a platoon at second base with either Iglesias and Acuna, Acuna McNeil, something along those lines, maybe Jet Williams and Acuna. That's going to be it. And then Gilbert has to find his way into this lineup, probably with the corner outfield. My best guess is that when Nimmo's done playing, Drew Gilbert's going to take his spot in left field.
I actually think you got a swap. Maybe you move Gilbert. I know you know this because you watch the prospects like I do. Gilbert he'll be one of the top 5 right fielders in baseball because of his arm. He has an absolute cannon. So maybe if Soto's open to it, maybe you could
Soto's going to be the
switch them
DH
around.
someday, right? Whether it's 20,
I
30,
agree.
it's going to happen.
But I think everyone keeps saying, "Oh, in 4 years, 5 years, Soto's going to be." He's 26.
Right.
Call me when he's 34.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm going to be, in my 40s by the time that guy's DHing. And I love all the Yankee fans. Man, the hate is so real. I eat it for breakfast. My DMs are open to all you Yankee fans out there. I love when you guys tweet at me. It makes my day. I show it to my wife, who's a Yankee fan, and she melts down because she misses Soto. But too bad. This is a Mets household. everyone thinks Juan Soto's going to age poorly. What on earth makes you think that? First
They
of all, he's 26, so we don't know.
right.
Second of all, there's guys like Mo Vaughn and Big Poppy who smashed the hell out of the ball till they were almost 40 years old. Look at Miguel Cabrera. I
Prince
mean, they have
Fielder,
way worse body types than Juan Soto does.
right?
And maybe Juan Soto, we don't know, Dan. Maybe he's not the greatest athlete, but we've seen other players switch positions before. Bryce Harper was an unbelievable right fielder. Hurts his arm, he goes to first base. There's a DH now in the National League. To think that Juan Soto all of a sudden is guaranteed to suck in 10 years is the biggest fallacy out there.
I think
Sorry,
that's
I had to put that out there.
no, I think you're right. You're gonna get 5 years easily out of him in right field. I don't think it's really gonna be a question because you want the bat in the lineup, and he's gonna be serviceable enough in right field that we look at him like even Tyrone Taylor last year. And I mean, that's probably a bad example. These guys were really good on defense, but Marte last year, right? We didn't love it, but it was good enough. I think that's kind of the mentality with Soto because the bat, again, is just so lethal. It's something to think about. I think the same logic applies to Pete. He's not going to be off first base in 3 or 4 years. He's still going to be able to play the position.
So we have this from Wilfred. And if you got to go, Dan, just let me know. It's not a big deal.
We do, right?
We still have shout out to the 900 people watching live. I mean, this is awesome.
That's
Love
what's
you
up.
guys. Love interact. I had a whole show set up with all these videos and stuff, and I'm just enjoying chatting it up with you guys. I hope Dan is too.
Of
Maybe
course.
Dan will be mad at me afterwards. We'll
No,
see.
we're good. We're good. Love the Mets.
Wilfredo Ruiz signed Bregman for a 5-year contract deal. Play him alongside Lindor, best left side of base in baseball. He's got a point there. Got a
Easily.
point there.
It
That's
is.
why. That's why, Dan, I think a lot of people are associating Bregman with our team because we all know David Stearns values defense so highly. I mean, we have a center fielder for crying out loud hitting 188. 188. Find me the last World Series champion who had a starting player hitting under 190.
Doesn't
I don't know
happen.
if it exists. Wow, random comment from Frank agreeing with me. I don't know. I just randomly clicked on it. Shout out to you, Frank, for must be smart. Great minds think alike, my man. Totally agree with you, Ray. Hold on, I gotta read that again. Totally agree with you, Ray. We need a we need a frontline starter. I will say the Mets should find a way to trade for Castillo, and that's something that we brought up on the program before. Let me think. What kind of trade would you be interested in, Dan? Castillo or another starter? I'd 100% be in on Castillo. We know they're trying to move that money. I'd be willing to take on the entirety of the contract to lessen that prospect going back. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I floated a tweet. Like anyone that follows me on Twitter knows I just sometimes tweet out random hypotheticals. I said Cease for Jet Williams, McGill, Nate Dom, Ronald Hernandez. I mean, it is a little bit of a haul, but you're going to have to give up a top prospect. Every time I do one of those trades, I always hear, where's the top 10 prospect? That's what they want. That's the truth. It's going to have to be Gilbert. It's going to have to be either Williams, Gilbert, Acuna, Sproat, but again, it feels like he's untouchable. So if you're talking about a Luis Castillo, which I think we all agree is probably the arm we all agree we would trade for, yeah, you're going to have to give up Drew Gilbert or one of these guys. It's just inevitable. You have to think about the other team, right? I fall guilty to this. The Mariners wouldn't pick up the phone if it's not one of our top prospects. That's just the reality.
You really think so?
Yeah. Any of these teams, Ray, the Twins with Pablo Lopez, like if it's not
Well, I feel like he's a different caliber. His contract's different. He's, the age difference.
like Dylan Cease, they're gonna want. They probably want Jet Williams, I would assume.
So we have this from Frank as well. Look, I'll give you one, Dan. Dan, I agree with you. Acuna is ready and should be the starting second baseman.
Yep, that's it. That's it. No questions asked.
So we have this from go ahead, finish.
No, you're good. McNeil's great, but he's not. It's just not it.
We have this from Ariel Greenberg. I honestly think the Mets are done with the starting rotation. As much as I think we need more, I think they are done. And I actually if it's a move, I think it's going to be a small move. And I hate to even say that because I trust the pitching lab just as you guys do. But at the end of the day, talent's talent. Look what happened to Manaea in the postseason. I think he ran out of gas personally, but that happens. Happens to the best of them.
Whole
I
team
mean,
did.
go watch the Yankees with look at Severino in the postseason with the Yankees. He had some great games and some awful games. And that's because postseason baseball is nothing like it. That's why I say it time and time again, you got to load up on this bullpen. Bullpens are determining World Series now. The Dodgers threw a bullpen game, if not two, in every series they played in the postseason. That should tell you how important the bullpens are now.
Yeah,
They have guys coming out of their left and right there that are throwing 100 miles an hour.
they're everything, right? That's it. You
Oh,
need a good bullpen.
shout out to Andy. I'll be there. I'll bring a few propane tanks if he's going to open it. Look, if Dan Wuss is out, people, I will be there. Don't worry. No, I'm just messing with you, Dan.
I'll be either working or I'll be there, one way or the other. I'll find my way
Same
into the
here.
building. Don't worry.
Maybe I'll bring Andy on as a special host, but I got to be careful. Andy, you can't curse out everybody in the park. No, I'm just gonna. Andy's
We gotta get BT back on here. Get our guy BT.
BT all of a sudden doesn't want to respond to me. It's so weird. He comes on, he talks his smack. I love BT, by the way. We've talked on the side, but he talks all his smack. All of a sudden, Soto becomes a Met, and never heard from him again. It's so strange. He used to retweet me. He would DM me. Now all of a sudden, we're not friends no more. We have this from Goomba. Acuna, second base. Gilbert, center field. And only use Siri late for defense and close games. Use Clifford for trade because we sign in Vladdy next year. I like that idea. I will say this. A lot of Met fans are saying, let's try Acuna in center field. I don't know if he's got a cannon from shortstop. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to have a strong arm from the outfield. And I don't know. Maybe you think different, Dan.
Siri has a cannon. I mean, Gilbert, yeah, he profiles better as a corner guy. Acuna would be great in center field. Watch out for Mauricio in center field too. But Acuna probably feels like the one that could be the center fielder. I'd feel more comfortable with him there, but he's just not experienced. You have to give him time. Like, give him some spring training games in center field. That would be great. Is Ronnie similar to O'Neal Cruz? Yeah, very similar. Similar to him, similar to Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, the same body type, speedy, switch hitting, freak of nature. I mean, Mauricio's the whole package. He's out of any Mets prospect, he has the highest ceiling. I mean, that's it.
I agree. Ariel back at it again. When healthy, Nimmo is honestly one of the better left fielders in the game. I wouldn't be so sure about moving him to the DH spot. My thing is this. I wouldn't move him permanently to the DH spot, but giving him a day off or two and allowing him to DH because he's had those injuries. He's now in his 30s. What do we how much time do we have left on that deal? Do you know?
6 years? He signed it 2 years ago. He signed an 8 for 162, right?
Yeah, so we have him until he's 37. He's 32. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years left on that contract. It's so funny, man, because people laughed at us when that contract was signed. He's making $20 million a year.
Right. And he's the best left fielder in the National League, right?
B.R. Wolkoff did a thing at the end of the season. He was easily in the top 10 in left fielders in baseball.
Just so other people hear this real quick, Nimmo's, I mean, we all kind of assume this. He's going to have a monster year. Down year last year, 25 home runs, 20 stolen bases, because he had 15 last year. He was 15 for 15. And he talked about it. He's like, I want to steal more. Like, I want to make that a part of my game. So watch out for that.
We have this from Coy Turnbull. Lindor Bregman could be our new right Reyes.
It didn't come up to. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that sounds like a little.
Right hit 330.
Yeah, I don't know.
I get what you're trying to say. They're not also homegrown, but I mean, and Lindor's a way better player than Reyes ever was. Let's just call a spade a spade. I love Reyes. Met Reyes, great guy. Got his autograph. Is no comparison there. One's an MVP candidate.
Both are on the Hall of Fame ballot. I mean, I guess you could say Bregman and Lindor will be on the Hall of Fame ballot someday.
Well, Lindor will be a Hall of I think Lindor
is
as close to a sure thing as it gets.
You don't think Bregman's a Hall of Famer?
I think he could be. I got to look deeper into his stats. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to
Right,
be,
right, right. We
we
should
need
do that one episode, look at the guys in the league that are, like, easily Hall of Famers and then the ones that are, like, borderline. It's a great conversation.
Soto be a Hall of Famer.
I
We,
think he is as of this moment, but
think about this. We potentially have 2 Hall of Famers in their prime at shortstop and right field, and we have them locked up for the future.
and
Who
Pete,
knows? Look, I know Alvarez had a down year. I am such a believer in this kid.
he
And
could be a
maybe
Hall
it's
of
my
Famer. Yeah,
fandom coming out of me, but I've seen how hard he works and the work he puts in. I think he could be a Pudge Rodriguez type player. I really do.
easily, right, 100%. I mean, Mets Hall of Fame, Nimmo's going there someday, Alonso's going there, but I think Alonso has a shot at
Well,
Cooperstown
Alonso, I mean, not. We'll see. If
over
Alonso leaves right now, is he a Mets Hall of Famer?
probably. Yeah, probably. Rookie of the Year, home run derby titles, great person, memorable.
Only you would count home run derby titles. I love you,
I mean,
Dan.
it's something, on the mantle of Pete Alonso, it's there, but yeah,
We're good.
you.
Go ahead, finish.
I just think, yeah, Pete's a guy that, I
Could
don't
be.
know. Yeah, he could be.
So before we get to our next chat, I want to give a shout out to you guys in the chat. If you're not following, like and subscribe. Shout out to the 1,000 people listening live. This is awesome. We love engaging with you guys. We're no experts, but I do plan on having several guests on here. I had Nelson. My setup is now just about complete behind me, as you guys could see. Got all my internet fixed to do these lives. I plan on helping Nelson Figueroa once the off season kind of wraps up. He said he'll absolutely come back on here. I will do that live with you guys because I want to see you guys have your comments. It's not just about me. We do this for the fans. That's why we always say for the fans, by the fans. Dan knows more about baseball than I do. I'm more of a fan like you guys. He's more in-depth, involved in every single day. I run a fan account, but we appreciate you guys being here, and we'll keep it moving. We got Ray Charound. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry if I'm not. We need to keep Sprout so we could have Sprout outs. Scrote outs shirts when it comes up.
Heard it all.
I had to, we had after LFGM. Is anything off topic?
You're right. Going back to Pete real quick too, Ray, like,
Sure.
he could be a Hall of Famer. I mean, he hits 500 home runs. He's on path to do. I mean, if he has another really good season next year, maybe we start to have those conversations, but 500 home runs for Pete, easily 400, but I mean, that's probably a Hall of Famer. Maybe. I think there's a chance. I don't think that's delusional. I don't.
No, I don't. I was laughing at a comment. Sorry, I'm listening
no,
to
you're
you
good.
and I'm reading the comments too, so I can get them back up. So we have this from Paolo. Shout out to you on listening live on Facebook Live. If you're not following us on Facebook, guys, we appreciate it. Facebook is the driver of all social media. People don't realize that. You could have tens of thousands of followers on X. There's nothing like a Facebook following because it becomes a community. So if you guys want to give us a follow over there, it's the same at Metcast Pod. But Alonso is acting like a disgruntled employee. Everyone's fault but his. I want to remind people of this. This is not Pete Alonso. This is Scott Boras. But I will say this. He fired his agent to hire Scott Boras. So you have to know what you're getting into, Dan. You can't just sit here. I didn't know that Scott Boras was going to ask for the world and not get it for me. I mean, why are you firing your agent then?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Listen, you just want the most money. He thinks he's a superstar player, and to some degree he is, but he's not a $200 million player. And you hire Scott Boras to get you $200 million, and same thing with Corbin Burnes. We're seeing it, and it's not pretty. And I feel bad for Alonso. I feel bad for these athletes year after year getting subject to this stuff. I mean, Boras is a great agent. He's the best agent in baseball history.
For elite players, I feel.
Right. But yeah, it's just enough is enough. Like, Alonso should be signed. It's going to be months, Ray. It's probably going to be February when we're still having these conversations, but yeah.
We'll be having them with you guys.
If Alonso Boras rejected 3 for 90, the Mets will move on. Probably, yeah. Bregman will sign and Vientos will move to first. He can do just fine. Mets will still have home run power. Third will now have a Gold Glover and same power. I agree. On paper, it's great, right? But developmentally, for what the Mets have built, you're just going to throw Alonso to the curb? I mean, I know you're not doing it because he turned down the 3 years, 90, and it's like, Pete, you haven't won a World Series. Why would you ever turn down that money? I think 4 for 120, as was mentioned before, that's another option. It's not going to be too far off. The Mets, he's going to
Would
go
you
back.
even opt out after the first and second year, or would you? What
I
are your
wouldn't
thoughts
do
on that?
first year's tough, probably second year.
I mean, if he wants to opt out after the second year, thank you and good riddance. That's how I would. And
Right.
it
Because then
might
it would
sound a
be
little rude
right.
to say that, but you
Yeah.
know, that's how I look at that. And so we have this. I was reading this. Bregman doesn't strike out from Robert Nolan. Sorry, sorry, I forgot to say some of your guys' names. From Robert Nolan, Bregman doesn't strike out a ton. Has pop walks, puts the ball in play. Mets fan rag on him because he's not homegrown. I don't get it. I will say this. I saw some advanced analytics come out, and it was more for the Yankees. I was watching the Yankee Network because I like to see what everybody's saying. And supposedly there was like almost a dozen of his home runs that were hit that wouldn't have been home runs in like 90% of ballparks. So I think a lot of people are worried his power numbers would take a massive dip. And let's be honest, City Field is massive. But here's my thing. If you brought him in here, it makes sense. Even if he's a doubles machine, he doesn't strike out. And Dan, this is what we were talking about in Spaces the other day. Think about this. The new day and age is get that starter out. When you look at the Dodgers, if you're facing them in the playoffs with the Otanis, the Glasnows, the Yamamoto, all of them, what's the one thing you could do to hurt their lineup?
Get him out of
Foul
the
a
game. Yeah.
crap ton of pitches off. Soto does that. We saw Vientos do it last year. We saw Lindor do it. They both did in the postseason, Vientos and Lindor. And then you add a guy like Bregman who does the same thing. That's how you get starting pitchers out of the game in the fourth and fifth innings and get to their bullpen in the playoffs. That's why that would make sense. So I like Bregman. I think he's plan A, B 1A behind right behind Pete Alonso. I think Alonso, a lot of people are stuck on him because emotionally, and I get it because I feel the same way. I couldn't envision Pete in orange and gray in a San Francisco jersey. It would just look very strange in that massive ballpark. It would look, it would just look really weird. But we got to face reality. That is an extreme reality we're facing. I think Bregman is more of a David Stearns guy, and Alonso is just not a David. That's why you see 3 for 90. I mean, they just recently offered him a 7-year contract extension. Now it's been cut in half. Now maybe that's just a starting point, but it's really interesting when you hear about that.
It's very interesting with Bregman. I mean, I think he's a big beneficiary of those Crawford boxes. Left field at Minute Maid. It's a short left field there. He pulls the ball. He's a pull-happy hitter. That's something that doesn't really play well at Citi Field. It could, but I just don't know to the same extent that it does in Houston. He's a great player. He's someone that can make this team instantly better. It's just, I just don't know, Ray. I always go back to that.
Plus defense. Stearns is a defensive guy, Dan.
It feels like Alonso or Bregman. It doesn't feel like both. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I could be off in that, but it just doesn't.
So Robert Nolan has another good point. I get the feeling that Stearns has made the offer he is comfortable with regarding Pete, and he's not upping the offer. I wonder how much longer Mets will wait for him before moving on to someone else. I agree. I think that was a David Stearns type offer. I mean, we heard what Cohen said earlier in the offseason. He understands the implications of losing a guy like Pete Alonso via free agency to another team, and he understands what he means to the fan base. David Stearns doesn't think that way. David Stearns thinks in regard to X's and O's.
My best guess, Ray, Stearns does not like Pete. I mean, it kills me to say that.
I agree.
He would have been signed by now. That's just the reality. They would have met him wherever they needed to. He would have been a Met. That's why this is so scary. And you have Boris on top of it. It's a recipe for disaster. It is. And I don't say that lightly because this is really not good for Alonso. For Castillo, we give up Clifford because we're getting Vladdy and or Pete. He doesn't have a spot. Yeah, Clifford's a big trade piece for the Mets because a lot of these teams look for first base. Oh, yeah, but they look for first base help. And the Mets don't have other first base help besides Vientos. Nobody's trading him. So yeah, it falls on Clifford's shoulders to kind of be a trade piece. And if you're going to get Castillo, Clifford's probably a guy too that would be in that deal. So yeah,
I found Dan's burner account, I Heart Winker.
there you go. See, there's
And
two
guys,
people on this earth that like Winker. I don't know.
yes, we'll take this last comment from Sierra. I'd pass on Bregman. Too much money, too many years. Wait on Pete. See if the numbers come down. Be ready to move on. Beatty Mauricio as backup plan. Get deal together for Pirates. Jared Jones.
I like Jared Jones. Great pitcher. It was very weird that Mitch Keller and Jared Jones, both the Pirates are hearing calls on. Again, Ray, I told you, anytime you hear those reports, those are the ones you listen to. Because if teams are taking calls on these guys, just like the Mets were with Brett Beatty, there's something coming down the line.
Just like the Mariners with Castillo, we've been talking. I mean, that's been well known. They're open to taking calls in regard to Castillo.
Yep. But right when that broke, it's like, all right, this is 2 months of Castillo talk.
100%. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with this live stream. Again, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, we humbly ask you to get to our goal of 3,000 subscribers. Once we do that, we'll be doing some type of giveaway. I'm not sure exactly what it will be, but it will probably be done on a live, potentially with Dan here. If you're not following Dan, give Dan a follow over at Dan Bartels 2, us over at Metcast Pod on all platforms, especially Facebook. We appreciate you guys if you could give us a follow over there. And as maybe breaking news happens, Dan and I will hop back on here. Maybe Pete signs Bregman, something happens, hopefully by this weekend. Thanks so much for hanging around. Until next time, take care.